Hey guys, this is Hell Hades, and this is another Raid Shadow Legends video. So it's about time I did my next episode of my Clan Boss series. This is going to be episode 5, best champions for decreased defense, and a little bit more about what decreased defense actually does and when it's going to be important in the Clan Boss. Just in terms of a couple of call outs really before I go into the detail of this. So I use a couple of sites. So Yumilove, I've talked about it before, it's a really good site. And you're able to kind of go into this right hand side here and just pick on debuffs, decreased defense, and it kind of gives you a whole host of champions that do the small version and the larger version. So I've used this as part of my kind of research. And then I've also, I do some work here with Raid Codex website. So again, a really good website. What I like about this one is you're able to do a bit more of a filtering act. So if I take these filters off, you can go into champions up on the top right. And then basically from here you can apply a filter. So I can apply a filter that says there's a debuff I want and it's the bigger version of decreased defense. Tells me all of those champions. And then if I want to apply another filter and say, well actually I want somebody who is defense based, I can put that on as well and it will tell me, right, here's all the champions then, epics into legendaries that have got those two skills. They're a defense based champion and they've got decreased defense on their kit, in their kit. So it's pretty cool. It's quite a good addition. There's still some kind of kinks to work out on this site, but it's growing nicely. You'll also find I don't know why this is not now working. Yeah, here we go. You also find that the rest of my series is available here as well. It's also in a playlist I've got on my YouTube channel, but yeah, you can kind of go back in and kind of see some of the other episodes that I've been running. So let's get into this. Episode 5, decreased defense. So I just want to start, I kind of talked about this in my last episode, but I think it's a good opener really. What do we want to do with the Clan Boss? We want to have this balance of stay alive as long as we can, and we want the balance of doing as much damage output in that time that we're alive. So to stay alive, I already talked about decrease attack debuff, the most important debuff I think in the game for Clan Boss. I've talked about the fact that I like to stack defense on my champions as much as I can. And there's some other bits that we're going to go into in another episode. In terms of how to do damage with that time that you're alive, I've talked about poisoners and HP burners. I've talked about now the importance of War Master procs and counterattack through my speed video. And now I'm going to go into the importance of decreased defense. So if I just kind of punch on, this was kind of a bit of information I gathered just to kind of give some numbers really behind what does decreased defense actually do, and also how does it scale against the Clan Boss versus the other debuff which makes you hit harder, which is weaken. So got some fancy lines moving across a graph. Basically what I wanted to check out was what's better, weaken or decreased defense. So the numbers that I've pulled together are when you do a proc of your Giant Slayer or your War Master on all of the different Clan Bosses, how hard does that proc hit when it's just a base hit, when it's a base hit with weaken on it, when it's a base hit with decreased defense on it, and then when it's a base hit with weaken and decreased defense both on the Clan Boss. So you see the little grid at the bottom there, they're all the kind of actual numbers of what you're going to hit the Clan Boss for with your War Master proc against different grades, so easy through to Ultimate Nightmare. And actually, although it's obvious now that I've seen it, what I didn't realise was that weaken is actually the stronger debuff until you get onto the Nightmare Clan Boss. So if you only had the opportunity of putting one of these debuffs up, then actually weaken is better, you get a better bang for your buck until you get to Nightmare. Once you get to Nightmare, the Clan Boss's defense significantly starts to grow. And then at Ultimate Nightmare, it grows even more incredibly high. Like it's a massive kind of jump between Nightmare and Ultimate Nightmare in terms of how much that Clan Boss's defense grows. And at that point, if you don't have decreased defense on, you actually lose a shed ton of damage. So what I would say is, up until Brutal, your debuff slots are better filled with poison than they are with either weaken or decrease defense if you've got the ability to fill them up. If you don't have the ability to fill them up, then these two debuffs help you do more damage. So that's just a kind of call out really. And it's quite interesting for me. I've not fought the easy, normal, hard clan bosses in a long time. So doing this kind of bit of research was just genuinely quite fun. But you'll see there that, when you start getting to Ultimate Nightmare, basically if you've got decreased defense and weaken on, you're almost doubling the damage of your War Master and Giant Slayer hits. It's almost a double bubble damage. Whereas if you look back to easy, for example, actually decreased defense barely changes your hit at all. You only get an extra 7k for that hit, which is nothing compared to a poison ticking away. So you probably don't even want to consider it really for easy, normal. You maybe consider it for hard, but probably not. And then from brutal onwards, you definitely want to consider it, because each one of these hits you get on Giant Slayer and War Master start to kick in that extra damage. And that extra damage over the course of a turn will be worth more to you than the damage you get from one poison debuff. So let's go into the champions then. So I've done it in my normal kind of style. I've pulled out the champions that I think are most relevant for each of the different categories. For me, this is great to do because actually it just opens my eyes to champions that I just didn't ever consider. And looking through guys like the rares, I honestly didn't think there was any rares that I'd be calling out as one to look for. There wasn't any that were kind of on my radar. I know someone like a Bellowo has got some good debuffs, but actually the rest of his kit is not necessarily good for Clan Boss. So what I've done here, I've just kind of picked out who are the champions that have got the skills. I've looked at some which have got the small version of decreased defense, as well as those that have got the big version of decreased defense. For rares at least. I've not really done that one. I'll get past rares. I've then looked at what's their other utility, what's their kind of capability if they don't have books, how easy are they to book, and then what's their capability once they're booked, what clan boss do I think they could fight up until, and then giving them a kind of ranking at the end of that. So what you will notice here on this front page is all these champions except Lamela are attack based. And that means they're harder to keep alive. You'll also notice that most of them do not have a great uptime on the decreased defense. And if you don't have 100% uptime on decreased defense, then that graph I just showed you starts to be called into question, because you might not be hitting for that extra damage for enough time. Therefore, is that champion good enough versus someone else that can bring poison, is my question. So let's go through. I'm going to call a couple of them out. I'm not going to go through every one here. Marked is just like my standout champion that I had no idea she was going to be any good for this. She only does a small version of decreased defense, so she doesn't do the big version, which means that damage on that previous graph won't be quite as high. But what she brings is a really high uptime on the decreased defense, so 80%. She also brings an increased defense, the large version of that buff, which is massive. That's a massive ability for Clan Boss. In fact, that's probably worth more to you than the decreased defense in those early stages. So that's a really strong ability for you. And she also brings a block debuffs ability, which again is huge if you want to stop yourself getting stunned, or when there's those kind of negative affinity Clan Bosses and you don't want to pick up things like the poisons or the decreased speeds. So she's actually gone up in my estimations quite a lot for Clan Boss. Definitely for that earlier game, people that you might have in your roster that you don't even know about, that you might want to put some time into. And she ranks quite highly, so I've got her in at 18 points. She's easy to book. She does need books to be as effective as she can be. But yeah, she is good. What I'm going to do, actually, I'm just going to bring her up on the Yumilab website to show you, because a lot of you probably don't know who she is. I didn't know who she was until I started going through some of this stuff. Here we go. So here she is. She's a barbarian. So what I was saying here about the books, you see the debuff chance to land her decreased defense grows every time you put a book into her array 1. It only lasts for 1 turn, but because it grows up to 80%. I mean, definitely if she's in a counter-attack team, it's up all the time. If she's not, it's up most of the time. And the cooldown on her other ability, which is really strong, is free turn cooldown when booked. So it dramatically improves that cooldown as well once it's booked up. So I really like her. I think she could be really good for people's clan boss teams. So that's pretty cool. A couple others here. So we've got one sorceress who's got uptime of near enough 50% on her big version of decreased defense. So that's pretty cool. She doesn't really bring any more utility. She does need books to be more effective. So I think she could probably help you up until about hard clan boss. And Avenger has got a really similar kit, but she's got the smaller version of decreased defense, but it's got 100% uptime. And she does bring some other utility like additional hits and stuff like that, but nothing which really helps the rest of your team. So again, similar sort of score for me. Hard clan boss should be suitable for. And then the other one I'm just going to call out here is Lamella. So he has got the small version of decreased defense, which you'll be able to keep up 50% of the time. He's an HP based champion, which means he's going to stay alive longer than all of these attack based champions. You can stack his HP and defense and he will be more effective for you. He's also got a decreased attack on one of his abilities, although it's the smaller version of it, which again is the most important ability in the clan boss, certainly when you start getting up to kind of hard and above, to keep you alive for longer. So I think actually his kit's quite good for a rare. And again, if you've got him, he's probably worth putting a bit of time into gearing up. I said he goes up to hard, maybe he goes a little bit further, but he kind of comes in as my second highest scoring rare. Let's go on to epics. There's a few kind of household names in here, which most people would know, but there's also a few names in here which, again, I wasn't so aware of, and it's worth having a look at. I've gone through the same kind of stats I'm looking at here, so I kind of keep it quite even. So there's a couple up the top here, Aina and Frostbringer. I think they're reasonable. They do bring some different kind of utilities. Aina's got a Weaken, which is the strong version of Weaken. And she kind of keeps this debuff of decreased defense up about 60% of the time, which is good. It's good compared to a lot, actually. That you'd expect there'd be a lot more that are kind of 100% uptime, but there's not that many. So I'd say with the rest of her kit, she probably gets you through till about the Brutal clan boss. Frostbringer, pretty similar. She's only got 40% uptime on decreased defense, and that's sketchy because you need something to activate it. But she does increase ally speed and ally attack, so she can be quite good for earlier level clan bosses. She does kind of fall off quite hard though once you get past Brutal, and I've got first-hand experience of using her and finding that out. I thought she'd be better than she was, but actually she's kind of middle of the road. We've then got Madame Cerise, who's actually very strong. She's very strong because she's got the decreased defense with a 75% uptime. That's really high. She also brings the high version of decreased attack down. She can also steal the clan or remove the clan boss's buff when he puts it on in a negative affinity. So that's pretty good. I think she can get you through to Nightmare clan boss pretty effectively. And once she's booked, I think she's got to be up there as one of the better epics for this role, definitely. This is a guy that I had no kind of preconception of at all. I didn't realize that he would be strong for this role, but actually he is one of the few epics that brings decreased defense, the big version, for a 100% uptime, and that is a really great ability to have. It's a shame he's attack based, so that means that he's quite squishy and can go down quite easily, and he doesn't really bring you any other utility. I don't know if he hits hard or if he's going to be able to do a bit of damage for you. But in terms of this decreased defense, he's definitely kind of up there as very good for keeping up for a long period of the fight or all of the fight. So I've said he does need books, so he's kind of a B. If he's unbooked, goes into the A category if he is booked up. And I think he could do Brutal. He could potentially do Nightmare if he's geared in the right way and you don't have an alternative decreased defense. But he scores quite highly. Rearguard Sergeant is an excellent epic. For me, for this role, she's the best epic in the game. She's actually up there as one of the best champions in the game for this role. So she's defense-based, which is fantastic. She's got the 60% decreased defense, 100% uptime on it. She's also got a strong version of decreased attack. That doesn't have 100% uptime on it, but it's still a good champion to have as a kind of a backup for your decreased attack. She's got ally protection, she's got a heal, she's got an HP aura, which is a strong one. So she's got really great utility. She's an A if she's unbooked. She does need booking, and it's a bit harder to book her up. because she requires quite a few books. But when she's booked up, I think she becomes S tier. She's really close for me for SS tier, actually. She's up there. Maybe she is SS tier. Maybe I've done that wrong. She's up there as one of the best epics in the game, if not the best. One of the best champions in the game for this role. She can definitely carry you onto Ultimate Nightmare, and she scores really highly, 28 points. Wipes the board of any other epics in this category. Towering Titan's another one with this kind of 100% uptime on this ability. He is attack based, doesn't kind of give you much help there, but he's also got an increased defense, which I didn't realize on him. So he's actually not a bad champion, this guy. I think he can help you up to about brutal. Doesn't bring enough other utility to really do further than that, but these two together are actually two very strong abilities. So I'm surprised he doesn't get a bit more time in kind of mid-tier teams. He's somebody, if you don't have someone for this role, it's definitely worth investing some time in him. And then Tyrell, so Tyrell I've talked about in the decrease attack video. He's really strong. He's the best, or one of the best champions that does that role. And then he's kind of got the decreased defense as his second utility. So I was wondering whether to put him in this video at all, but I thought I better have, because otherwise I'll get 65 comments of someone saying, where's Tyrell? It's not his primary role, but he's still really strong in this position. So if actually you've got, so actually he can become a kind of dual support. It becomes your decreased attack, and then he kind of steps in for the decreased defense. But it only has about a 50% uptime, so that compared to like a rearguard sergeant is not strong enough. They're almost the opposites, but rearguard sergeant brings more utility. That said, Tyrell's decreased attack is the most important ability in the game, so he does mean he gets through to Ultimate Nightmare, but you do need to book him up to get that kind of strength, and he kind of comes in higher end of the epics. So let's get into legendaries then. You'll see here there's only one person that outscores the rearguard sergeant for this role, which is pretty impressive and unbelievable, actually. So we've got Dracomorph. Dracomorph has got about 66% uptime on the decreased defense. So it's not 100% uptime. It's a really great ability that Draco brings, but it's not 100% uptime. He also brings a weaken, the big version. He brings a lot of poison. I've given the poison here 3 points because it's such a heavy amount of poison. Unbooked, he's really effective. You do need to invest books to get this ability down to the 66% uptime. So, without books, he's actually got a worse uptime than this. But booked, he's SS tier and definitely an Ultimate Nightmare champ for you, 25 points. Foley surprised me, actually, scored higher than I thought he would. I don't rate Foley at all, but when I actually see his kit, he's good for this role. He's got 100% uptime on this decreased defense. He's immune to stun, so he can go in that leader position and take a whack and not be stunned. Doesn't mean you lose out on an aura, but you can also, if you're clever, you can position your team so that he's not your leader and still takes the stun if you kind of work it in the right way. A unbooked, S tier booked. I think he's good enough up until Nightmare. I think Ultimate Nightmare he will struggle, but probably could just about do it. If we then look at Fushan, so Fushan, 50% uptime on this position. I don't think it's his best position, but if you've got him and nobody else, he's worth thinking about because he also brings a speed aura, and a speed aura is great in any dungeon, any clan boss. Any dungeon, any event, speed aura can help you, unless you are running speed tune teams, in which case it still can help you, but you just need to take it into account with your speed setup. So I think he can work right up until Nightmare. For me, he's the worst of the legendaries for this role, but still scores okay. We've then got Marta, who is the ultimate champion for this role. She's defense based. She's got 100% uptime on her ability. She also brings attack down, albeit it's not 100% of the time up. She brings 5-man counter attack. She brings increased defense. She's got the strong defense aura. I mean, her utility score here is mental, 9 points utility score. And she's obviously strong enough to go right through to the end game. Razin is a personal favourite of mine for this role. So he brings the decreased defense for 75% of the time. He also brings the weaken for the same length of time. And he's got the ability to rip buffs off of the clan boss, which is really good. You do need to book him, and he takes quite a few books. And you've got to get books into this skill for it to be effective. But again, he can be Ultimate Nightmare contender. And then we've got Venus. So Venus is attack base, which lets her down. Gives her about 66% uptime on this position. but she's almost, well, she is identical to Dracomorph in this position. So they're both attack based, they both bring the weaken as well, they both bring heavy poison, and they store the same, so they've both got 25 points. But pretty much anyone, there's 4 on here that I would say are really worth investing your time and your books in if you've got them. If you don't have those, I would definitely say that Rearguard Sergeant is also somebody that is worth massive investment in, and she does the role really well. So just to kind of rank these against each other then, all I've done is kind of put all of their scores side by side. So as you can see here, Martyr's clear winner with Rearguard Sergeant behind. We've then got a few legendaries that kind of do the same thing in about the same, with the same kind of consistency. And then you've got a couple more epics, Tyrell and Madame Cerise, that kind of come up behind that. Marked as a kind of honorary mention for getting in amongst the legendaries and the epics. And then you've got a couple more epics which I wasn't really aware of that can do the role well. I'd say if you start getting below those guys, maybe these next 3 are worth investing in if you need this position filled and you don't have poison to kind of counter it. But I think as soon as you get to sort of Avenger and worse, I would try and find poisoners or just better damage instead of trying to include them in your teams. So for me, anyone who scored less than kind of 12 points on this graph, I wouldn't invest in them. I don't think they're probably good enough to go into a clan boss team unless you're just struggling for someone to fill in your positions. So that is going to be it for the decreased defense video. Hopefully it's been helpful. Leave me a comment and a like if you think this content is working for you. Also give me any kind of feedback around what I might have missed, or if you've had any experience using people like Necro Hunter, Towering Titan, Marked. I'd really love to see actually how they've performed in real life in an actual fight. It'd be worth knowing if it's worth me kind of investing some time in gearing one out to test them at some of the different levels of clan boss. Or definitely if you've already got them testing and working, I'd like to see what compositions they're fitting into and what sort of damage you're able to do. I've been Hell Hades. Thanks for watching. Catch you soon.